The cafe was already busy when the single father walked in. It was the kind of place where people came every morning without thinking much about it. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, mixed with the sound of cups clinking and quiet conversations. He pushed the door open carefully, making sure his small child stayed close to him. The child held his hand tightly, looking around with wide eyes, curious about everything. The father chose a table near the window, not too close to anyone else. He always preferred corners. It made things easier. He helped his child sit down, placed a small bag on the chair beside him, and took a slow breath. Mornings like this were rare. Most days were rushed and loud. This one felt calm, at least for now. He ordered a simple breakfast. Nothing fancy. He had learned long ago not to spend extra money on things that did not matter. As they waited, he pulled a napkin from the holder and cleaned his child's hands. His movements were gentle and careful, like this was the most important task in the world. Anyone watching closely could see that he was used to doing everything on his own. The father looked ordinary. His clothes were clean but worn. His jacket had faded over time. There was nothing about him that drew attention. He blended into the cafe like any other tired parent trying to get through the day. That was exactly how he wanted it. Not far from them sat a man who did not blend in at all. He spoke loudly, laughing at his own jokes. His phone was on the table, screen facing up, flashing with messages. He wore expensive clothes and made sure everyone could see them. He leaned back in his chair, one arm stretched across the seat beside him like he owned the place. At first, the father paid no attention. He focused on his child, pointing out the birds outside the window. The child smiled and pressed their face against the glass. It was a small moment, but it mattered. Then a voice cut through the quiet. "Some people really let themselves go," the loud man said, not even lowering his tone. A few people glanced over, unsure who he was talking about. The father did not look up. He had heard comments like that before. He had learned that reacting often made things worse. The man chuckled and continued. "And bringing kids to places like this so early? Must be hard when there's no one else around to help." This time, the meaning was clearer. A woman nearby shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Another man frowned but said nothing. The cafe staff stayed behind the counter, pretending not to notice. The father's jaw tightened for a brief second. His hand paused mid-air, then continued wiping crumbs from the table. He spoke softly to his child, asking if they wanted juice or milk. His voice stayed calm, steady, almost gentle. That calm seemed to annoy the loud man even more. "Hey," he said, leaning forward now. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking." No one answered. The silence made the words heavier. The father finally looked up, just for a moment. His eyes met the man's face. There was no anger in them, no fear either, just a quiet, unreadable look. Then he looked away. The man scoffed. "Figures. No backbone." The child looked at their father, sensing the change in the room. "Papa?" the child whispered. "I'm here," the father said, giving a small smile. "Everything's fine." But it wasn't fine. Everyone could feel it. The food arrived, breaking the tension for a moment. The father thanked the server politely. He helped his child with the straw, making sure they didn't spill anything. His focus never wavered. It was like the noise around him did not exist. The loud man shook his head and laughed again, louder than before. "Unbelievable," he said. "Some people just accept their place." A young couple at another table exchanged looks. They clearly wanted to leave. The cafe no longer felt warm or welcoming. The father took a sip of his coffee. It was hot, bitter, grounding. He had faced worse mornings than this. Much worse. He reminded himself of why he was there. Breakfast. Time with his child. Nothing else mattered. The man stood up suddenly, chair scraping against the floor. The sound made several people flinch. He walked a few steps closer. Not too close, but close enough to feel threatening. "Teach your kids something," he said. "Teach them not to end up like you." That was when the father froze. For just a second, the room seemed to hold its breath. The father slowly placed his cup down. His hand rested flat on the table. His shoulders straightened, not in anger, but with control. He looked up again. This time his eyes were different. They were sharp, focused, alert. The man noticed it too, though he didn't understand why it made him uncomfortable. He smirked, trying to keep his confidence. "What?" he said. "Got something to say now?" The father did not raise his voice. He did not stand up. He simply spoke, calm and clear. "Step back," he said. It wasn't a request. The word was simple, almost quiet, but it carried weight. A strange silence spread through the cafe. Even the coffee machine seemed to pause. The man laughed, but it sounded forced. "Or what?" The father did not answer. He just kept his eyes on him, unblinking. His breathing was slow, measured. People began to sense that something had changed. This was no longer about insults or pride. There was something else beneath the surface, something no one could quite name yet. The child held onto the father's sleeve. The father gently covered the child's hand with his own, reassuring without looking away. The man took one more step forward, and the cafe waited. No one knew it yet, but this quiet morning was about to become something none of them would ever forget. The loud man stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do next. He had expected shouting, maybe anger or even fear. What he did not expect was silence and steady eyes. The cafe felt smaller now, like the walls had moved closer. "Don't tell me what to do," the man said, forcing a grin. "This is a free place." The father said nothing. He stayed seated, one hand still resting near his child. His body was relaxed, but his attention was sharp. Anyone watching closely could see that he was fully aware of everything around him. The chairs, the tables, the distance between them. Nothing escaped him. The man shifted his weight from one foot to the other. He laughed again, but the sound did not carry the same confidence as before. "See?" he said loudly, turning slightly so others could hear. Still nothing to say. A few people looked down at their cups. Others watched with quiet concern. No one stepped in. Not yet. The father finally spoke again, his voice low. "You should sit down." That was it. No insult. No threat. Just a simple statement. The man's face tightened. He did not like being told what to do, especially not by someone he believed was beneath him. "Who do you think you are?" he snapped. The father did not answer the question. Instead, he turned slightly toward his child. "Finish your drink," he said softly. "We'll leave soon." The child nodded, trusting him completely. That trust seemed to irritate the man even more. "You hear that?" he said to the room. "Teaching the kid to run away." The father's eyes returned to him. Calm. Clear. "I'm teaching my child to choose peace." Those words landed heavier than any insult. The cafe went quiet again. The man scoffed. "Peace," he repeated. "You look like someone who lost a long time ago." The father did not react, but something inside him shifted. Not anger, not pride, memory. He remembered other rooms, far louder than this cafe. He remembered commands, pressure, moments where a single wrong move could end everything. Compared to that, this was nothing. Just noise. The man leaned closer, lowering his voice. "People like you should know your place." The father's chair moved back an inch. Not suddenly. Not aggressively. Just enough. A woman near the counter finally spoke. "That's enough," she said, though her voice shook. The man glanced at her, annoyed. "Mind your business." "It is my business when you talk like that," she replied. The man waved her off and turned back to the father. "Last chance," he said. "Say something." The father stood up. Slowly, smoothly. The movement was controlled, almost quiet, but it changed the air in the room. He did not puff his chest. He did not step forward. He simply stood, placing himself between the man and his child. He was not tall. He was not large. But the way he stood made him feel solid, like a wall that would not move. "Go back to your table," the father said. The man opened his mouth to laugh, but the sound never came out. Something in the father's posture stopped him. His hands were open, his shoulders relaxed, his eyes steady. This was not a bluff. The man hesitated, just for a moment. Then pride took over. He reached out, pushing the edge of the table lightly, as if to show he was not afraid. The father moved. It happened fast, but not violently. He caught the man's wrist with precision and turned it just enough to break balance. Not bones. The motion was clean, practiced, and over in seconds. The man stumbled back, shocked more than hurt. The cafe erupted in gasps. The father released him immediately and stepped back. "I asked you to step away," he said. The man stared at his wrist, then at the father. His face had gone pale. "What the hell was that?" he whispered. The father did not answer. He picked up his jacket with his free hand and checked on his child. "You okay?" The child nodded, eyes wide but calm. Someone behind the counter picked up the phone, unsure whether to call for help. Another customer stood up, ready to block the door if needed. The man backed away slowly. His voice was no longer loud. "You think you're tough?" he said, though it sounded weak. The father met his eyes one last time. "No," he said. "I think you're done." The words were simple, final. The man grabbed his things and retreated to his table, avoiding everyone's gaze. He sat down hard, breathing fast, his confidence gone. The cafe was silent again, but this time it felt different. Not tense, watchful. The father sat back down with his child. He wiped the table, straightened the cup, and took a slow breath. His hands were steady. A server approached carefully. "Do you want me to call someone?" she asked. "No," the father said gently. "We're fine." She nodded, still shaken. Across the room, people whispered. Some looked at the father with curiosity, others with respect. No one spoke to him directly. The man stayed quiet, staring into his coffee like it had betrayed him. The father finished his drink. He helped his child put on their jacket. Before leaving, he looked around once more. His eyes softened, the sharpness fading. To everyone else, it was clear now. They had not been watching a weak man push too far. They had been watching someone who chose restraint. And they knew, without anyone saying it out loud, that this story was far from over. The cafe stayed quiet long after the father and his child sat back down. Cups cooled. Conversations did not restart. Everyone pretended to mind their own business, but their attention kept drifting back to that table by the window. The loud man avoided looking up. He stirred his coffee again and again, even though he wasn't drinking it. His hand still felt strange, like it did not belong to him. He kept replaying the moment in his head, trying to understand how it had gone so wrong so fast. The father focused on his child. He opened the small bag and took out a snack, breaking it into pieces with care. His voice was soft as he spoke, asking about school, about a drawing that had been made the day before. He listened closely, nodding, smiling at the right moments. To anyone watching, it looked like an ordinary parent calming an ordinary child. But something about him felt different now. A man sitting near the door leaned toward the person beside him and whispered, "Did you see that move?" The other person nodded slowly. "Yeah, that wasn't luck." The cafe manager finally stepped out from behind the counter. She walked over carefully, keeping her tone calm. "Sir," she said to the loud man, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The man looked up, shocked. "What?" "He touched me." The manager didn't argue. "You were disturbing other guests." The man glanced around, hoping for support. No one met his eyes. He swallowed hard and grabbed his jacket. "This place is a joke," he muttered. As he stood, his chair scraped loudly across the floor. He hesitated, then glanced toward the father's table. Their eyes met again. This time, the father's look held no warning, only calm. The man looked away and walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft bell. The sound seemed to release something in the room. People breathed again. Someone laughed nervously. A few conversations started back up, though quieter than before. The manager turned to the father. "I'm really sorry," she said. "Your meal is on the house." The father shook his head. "That's not necessary." "Please," she insisted. "You handled that well." He nodded once in thanks. "We'll be leaving soon anyway." She smiled and returned to the counter. The father helped his child finish breakfast. He wiped sticky fingers, zipped the jacket, and lifted the small backpack. Every movement was steady, familiar, like a routine practiced many times. Before standing, he paused. He looked around the cafe, not searching, just observing. His eyes caught on small details most people ignored. The open door, the reflections in the glass, the way sound traveled through the room. A woman from another table approached slowly. "I just wanted to say," she began. "Thank you for staying calm." He offered a polite smile. "You're welcome." She hesitated. "You didn't seem scared at all." The father didn't answer right away. He adjusted the strap on his child's bag. "Fear has its place," he said finally. "This wasn't it." She nodded, unsure what to say next, and stepped away. The father and child stood. As they walked toward the door, people made space for them without realizing it. Not out of fear, but respect. Outside, the air felt cooler. The child looked up. Why was that man so mean? The father crouched down so they were eye level. "Some people carry heavy things inside," he said. "They don't know where to put them." "Did I do something wrong?" the child asked. "No," the father said quickly. "You did nothing wrong." The child seemed satisfied with that and reached for his hand. They started down the sidewalk, blending into the morning crowd. Cars passed. People hurried by with headphones and coffee cups. Life moved on just as it always did. But for the father, old thoughts had surfaced. He remembered mornings that began much earlier than this. Places far from cafes. Places where quiet meant danger and noise meant trouble. He remembered learning how to move without thinking, how to stay calm when others panicked. He had promised himself those days were behind him. A voice called out behind them, "Hey, wait." The father turned slightly, positioning himself without thought. A man jogged toward them from the cafe. It was the one who had whispered near the door earlier. "Sorry," the man said, holding up his hands. "I just wanted to ask something." The father waited. "That move back there," the man said. "You didn't hurt him, but you could have." The father looked at his child, then back at the man. "Hurting people is easy," he said. "Stopping before that is the hard part." The man studied him for a moment. "You military?" The father's jaw tightened just slightly. "I was," he said. "Special?" The father did not answer directly. "I was trained to end problems quickly," he said. "Now I try to end them quietly." The man nodded, understanding more than he said. "Your kid's lucky." The father smiled, this time more fully. "So am I." They parted ways. As the father walked on, the city noise faded into the background. He squeezed his child's hand gently. He did not feel proud. He did not feel angry. He felt relief. Relief that restraint still lived in him. Relief that his child had seen calm instead of chaos. Behind them, the cafe returned to normal. Soon, the story would turn into a rumor, then a memory, then nothing at all. But for a few people who were there that morning, it would linger. They would remember the quiet man who did not look strong, and how strength showed itself only when it had to. The rest of the day moved quietly for the father and his child. After leaving the cafe, they stopped by a small park nearby. The child ran toward the swings, laughing like nothing unusual had happened. The father sat on a bench watching closely, his eyes following every movement without looking tense. Parents around him chatted, scrolling on their phones, calling out reminders. No one knew what had happened an hour earlier. To them, he was just another tired parent enjoying a small break. As the child played, the father's thoughts wandered. Not to the bully's words, but to the feeling that followed. The feeling that came when he had stood up. It was familiar, and that bothered him. He had worked hard to leave that part of his life behind. He remembered the promise he made when his child was born. No more danger. No more living on edge. Just a simple life, even if it was not an easy one. The phone in his pocket vibrated. He hesitated, then checked the screen. It was a number he did not see often. He answered quietly. "Hello. Is this you?" A voice asked, careful and direct. "Yes." "We got a report about a situation at a cafe this morning." The father closed his eyes for a moment. He had expected this. "I understand. Nothing serious," the voice continued. "No one pressed charges. But someone mentioned your background." The father said nothing. "We just want to ask a few questions. Nothing formal." "When?" he asked. "Today, if possible." He looked toward the swings. The child waved, smiling. "I can talk now," he said. The conversation was brief, clear, professional. When it ended, the father put the phone away and exhaled slowly. He did not feel afraid. He felt tired. Later that afternoon, he picked his child up from the park and walked home. Their apartment was small but clean. Toys were stacked neatly in one corner. A calendar hung on the wall with reminders written in careful handwriting. The father prepared a simple meal. He listened as his child talked about the park, about a bird with a broken wing, about a dog that barked too loud. He nodded, asked questions, smiled. After dinner, he helped with homework. The child struggled with a few words, growing frustrated. The father stayed patient, guiding without pressure. "Take your time," he said. "You're doing fine." Those words mattered more than he realized. When the child finally went to bed, the apartment fell quiet. The father sat alone at the table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea. The events of the morning returned, clearer now. He wondered how many times something like this could happen. Not because he feared bullies, but because he feared the example. He did not want his child to grow up believing strength meant control over others. He wanted them to understand restraint, respect, and knowing when to walk away. That night he barely slept. The next day he received another call. This time the voice was familiar. Someone from his past. "I heard about what happened," the voice said. "People talk," the father replied. "They always do. You okay?" "Yes." A pause. "You didn't break your rule, did you?" "No," the father said. "I kept it clean." "Good." The call ended quickly. No details. No praise. Later that week, he was asked to come in for a short meeting. A small office. Neutral walls. Calm questions. He answered honestly without drama. "You could have handled it differently," one person said. "I could have," the father agreed. "But you didn't escalate." "No." They exchanged a look. "That matters." He was cleared without issue. Still, the story did not disappear as quickly as he hoped. Someone had recorded part of the incident on their phone. Not the start. Just the moment when the bully stumbled back. Shocked. The video made its way online, blurry and without context. Comments appeared. Some praised the father. Others made guesses about who he was. He avoided watching it. At the school gate one morning, another parent approached him. "That was you, wasn't it?" He sighed. "I don't want attention." "I know," the parent said. "Just, thank you. Some of us wish we could stay that calm." The father nodded and moved on. That evening, as he tucked his child into bed, a small voice asked, "Are you in trouble?" "No," he said gently. "Why did people look at you today?" He thought for a moment. "Sometimes people notice when someone stays calm," he said. The child considered this. "I want to be calm like you." The father felt something tighten in his chest. "That's the best kind of strong," he said. As the light went out, he sat beside the bed a little longer than usual. The world outside kept moving. Stories came and went. Noise rose and fell. But inside that small room, the lesson stayed quiet, steady, and real. And the father hoped it would last longer than any rumor ever could. Time passed, and the noise slowly faded. The video stopped spreading. New stories replaced it. People online moved on as they always did. At the school gate, the looks became normal again. At the grocery store, no one stared. Life returned to its usual rhythm. For the father, that was a relief. He liked quiet. Not the empty kind, but the steady kind. The kind where days followed a simple pattern. Wake up early. Make breakfast. Walk his child to school. Work. Come home. Cook dinner. Read a story before bed. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was honest. One afternoon, Weeks after the cafe incident, he found himself back on the same street. He hadn't planned it. His child had asked for a treat after school, and the cafe was nearby. He stopped outside the door. The bell above it rang softly as someone else walked out. For a moment, he considered turning away. Then he felt a small hand squeeze his. "Can we go in?" the child asked. He looked down and nodded. "Okay." Inside, the cafe looked the same. Same tables. Same smell of coffee. Same soft noise of people talking. But it felt different. The staff noticed him right away. One of them smiled. Not in a nervous way. In a kind way. "Welcome back," she said. He returned the smile. "Thanks." They chose a table near the window again. Not because he wanted to prove anything, but because his child liked watching the street. As they sat, he felt no tension. No tightness in his chest. Just calm. A man at the counter glanced over, then looked away. A woman nearby nodded at him. No one whispered. No one stared. This time he was just another customer. They ordered. They waited. The father noticed how his child chatted freely, relaxed, unafraid. That mattered more than anything else. While they waited for their food, the child asked, "Do you remember the mean man?" "I do," the father said. "Is he coming back?" The father shook his head. "No. And even if he did, it would be okay." "Why?" "Because we know who we are." The child thought about that, then smiled and returned to watching the window. The food arrived. They ate slowly, enjoying the moment. Across the room, a man stood up to leave. As he passed their table, he stopped. "I don't want to bother you," he said carefully. "But I was here that day." The father looked up. "Okay. I just wanted to say, I've been thinking about it a lot." The father listened. "You didn't show off," the man continued. "You didn't yell. You didn't scare your kid. You just handled it." The father nodded. "I did what I had to." The man smiled. "I wish more people did that." He walked away. The father felt no pride, just understanding. Later that evening, at home, the father found an old box tucked away in the closet. He hadn't opened it in years. Inside were things from another life. Not trophies. Not medals on display. Just reminders. He took one out and held it in his hands for a moment. Then he put it back. That part of his life had shaped him, but it did not define him. What defined him was the child sleeping down the hall. The drawings taped to the fridge. The small shoes by the door. That night, as he tucked his child into bed, the child asked a question he had been waiting for. "Are you a hero?" The father smiled softly. "No. Why not?" "Because heroes look for danger," he said. "I look for peace." The child nodded, satisfied. "I want to look for peace too." The father leaned down and kissed the child's forehead. "Then you'll be just fine." The lights went out. Days turned into months. One morning, while waiting at a crosswalk, the father saw a familiar face across the street. The loud man from the cafe. He looked different. Not weaker, just quieter. Their eyes met for a brief second. The man hesitated, then gave a small nod. Not an apology. Not a challenge. Acknowledgement. The light changed. They walked in opposite directions. The father did not look back. That was the last time he ever saw him. Years later, the child would barely remember the cafe. The raised voices. The tension. What stayed instead was the feeling of safety. The memory of a hand held firmly. A voice that stayed calm. That mattered. The world would always have bullies. Loud people. Those who tried to feel big by making others feel small. But it would also have people like the father. People who carried strength quietly. People who chose restraint when they could choose force. People who understood that real power did not need an audience. In the end, the story was never about a bully. It was about a single father who chose peace. And the child who learned that strength can be gentle, steady, and silent.